The best of Money Matters. The Big Story.
Welcome to The Big Story. I'm Nadiah Koh. Just yesterday, the Vatican confirmed the death of Pope Francis at the age 88, marking the end of a groundbreaking papacy that spanned over a decade. Pope Francis became the first Latin American pope in history when he was elected in 2013. Known for his commitment to humility and social justice, he shook up the Catholic Church with his progressive views on issues like climate change, poverty, and interfaith dialogue. His papacy was filled with both admiration and controversy as he faced fierce criticism from conservatives, while progressives often pushed for faster reforms. But what will Pope Francis' legacy be, and how will his passing shape the future direction of the Church? To discuss this, joining us today is Dr Michel Chambon, Research Fellow at the National University of Singapore. Dr Chambon, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Dr Chambon. Pope Francis has passed away at age 88, marking the end of a historic and often turbulent papacy. And as the first Latin American pope, he brought a very different perspective to the Vatican and to the global Catholic Church. How would you sum up his overall legacy? How do you think his approach left the Church unified?
So, the Pope was appointed to reform the Church and address a number of difficulties inside the Church, but also to reposition the ways in which the Church engage with global affairs. Clearly, we saw Pope Francis deliver two rounds of reforms inside the Catholic Church. First of all, on the administration of the Vatican, and then since 2023, he launched a gigantic consultation process called Synod on Synodality to kind of transform the way in which the Church is governed, insisting that mutual listening should become core model of governance. So that's on the internal front. On the external front, Pope Francis has also been extremely engaged and vocal on how the Church needs to reach out, and the Pope himself, to marginalized people. So his first trip, just after his election in 2013, was to the small island on Lampedusa, a highly symbolic gesture at the border between Europe and Africa. But for the past 12 years, we saw him traveling the world, giving always the priority to people who are marginalized, smaller countries, or forgotten regions. On the other aspect, he's been also extremely engaged to build peace and try to promote dialogue and encounter between different nations, political forces. We saw his deep engagement regarding the conflict between Gaza and Israel, but also Ukraine and so on.
Right. He became Pope in 2013 at a time where the Church was reeling from scandals and deep internal dysfunction, and Francis came in with a clear reform mandate to clear up the Vatican, address different crises, and restore credibility. So which of these goals did he manage to achieve, and where did he encounter the most resistance inside the Church hierarchy?
So, yes, he has, as mentioned, reformed the internal functioning of the Vatican, both on the financial aspect, but also regarding the sexual abuse crisis. So on the financial aspect, he imposed a new constitution for the Holy See that also impacts other aspects in terms of pastoral and religious priorities. On the sexual abuse, he has taken strong steps, but it remains a deep debate within the Catholic Church to what extent the fight against sexual abuse should be the absolute priority, because you can never have only one priority and eclipsing every other problems and issues. So it's been a constant struggle. Pope Francis has taken very strong action. So in 2019, we saw the first time the cardinals removed from the College of Cardinals, removed from ordination of bishop and priest, and trial and jailed. So the famous Cardinal Mark Carrick, former Archbishop of Washington, D.C., the most powerful American cardinal, because he had abused seminarians. So Francis being very firm on punishing this kind of high-level rank clerical officials, and yet it's only one aspect of the church, and it's a cancer, sexual abuse, that is present in the Catholic Church, but also in global institutions or national institutions, like in many, education, schools, the diplomatic corps. We know that pedophilia is a worldwide problem. It's not just the Catholic Church. But Pope Francis has been on the front to say the Catholic Church needs to clean up its own mess and be a model for other institutions to think about how do we address this cancer that is always a mix of power, money, and sex.
But do you think that his approach to reform was aggressive enough? Could he have done more given the scale of the problems he faced?
So as I mentioned, this priority should have always in dialogue or balance with other concerns and priorities. No, never the only one. Like, for instance, he went to Timor-Leste, where there is a deep problem of poverty. So you can put your finger on sex abuse in Timor-Leste because there are famous cases there. But if you care about justice, you cannot just ignore the economic injustice of the country and poverty. So justice is never just one aspect. You have to have a holistic view. So I do think it's been very aggressive. But people could say we need more, sure, but at the expense of breaking the church into a part where you have entire sections who would leave because they are exhausted or thinking it goes too far, or it's just a one-dimensional solution that is harming other aspects. So when you talk about sexual abuse, you don't talk anymore about economic injustice.
Right, okay. So Dr. Chambon, one of the most striking things about Francis was his personal style. He famously rejected the luxurious apartments, chose simpler clothing, and often spoke about humility and solidarity with the poor. How important were these personal gestures, given that he served as the symbol of the Catholic Church?
Yes, this temper, this style of humility and proximity is probably one of the most striking aspects of Pope Francis. I think when he came here in the region, Indonesians, millions of Muslim Indonesians, their heart got caught by the proximity and simplicity of Pope Francis, and that has a tremendous impact around the world to reflect what the good news of the gospel, of the example of Jesus, should mean today in our world. At the same time, with this humility, simplicity, and proximity, I do think that Pope Francis will be remembered as a firm and clear leader. He did dare to impose all kinds of reform within the church. He dared to challenge the American hegemony, or at least to question it. He dared to go again and again and again after China to say, no, if you preach for a multilateral world, we need to work together. You cannot just run away from the Vatican. We are a global actor. We are engaged in all kinds of issues about climate change, about poverty in Africa, all sorts of things, and we need to work together. Don't run away. So Pope Francis has been extremely firm and bold and consistent as a leader.
On that note of humility, do you think that future popes might feel the same amount of pressure now to live up to that more modest example?
Yes, and we will see. Starting today, cardinals start to congregate in Rome. Already they've been called summum yesterday. So some cardinals are taking their time here in Asia. I let you check which one. But some are already in Rome, and they have to discuss among themselves for the upcoming 2 weeks what is the state of the church, what is the state of global affairs, and how the next pope should engage with that. So this discernment and debate among them will define some kind of a profile, and if they can find the right fit, it will be the next pope. But it's very hard today to know exactly what will be the assessment of the internal situation of the church and of the global affairs. These assessments will define the profile that they are looking for, and if they can find the right fit, then it will be a pope like this. Otherwise, they're going to elect a pope that is, some kind of what we call a transitional pope that will put things on pause or let the church breathe. What I'm trying to say is we may have a Vatican II, as we may have a very different kind of pope that just let everybody breathe. We don't know. It really depends on the assessment of the cardinals, their internal debate. Right now, about what should we do with the new Trump administration? What should we do with the internal reform of the church? What should we do with this fight against sex abuse? So their responses will define the type of new pope we might see coming out of the Vatican in about 2-3 weeks from today.
Right. So, Dr. Chambon, it's also poignant to note that his final public appearance was on Easter Sunday, just one day before his death, when he greeted crowds at St. Peter's Square after a long illness. What do you think motivated him to make that appearance despite his frail health? How important was it symbolically for people to see him one last time? And do moments like this cement the Pope's image for history?
I think it was a very beautiful coincidence that clearly Easter is the most important feast of the year. It's when Christians celebrate the resurrection of Christ and the victory of life over death. Clearly, for Pope Francis, it was extremely important to appear and to give his most important blessing of the year, which he did. So we saw him among people, we saw him performing his duties, we even saw him meeting with the Vice President of the United States, with whom he had very complicated relationship, but yet he took the time, a Sunday morning, an Easter morning, to meet this political leader that is not spontaneously on the same side of Francis. So he performed, he was in the crowd, and then we all got caught by surprise that a few hours later he got called back to heaven, hopefully. And so it's a beautiful coincidence that he holds firm. After 2 months of silence, he appeared with us on the day of Easter, and now he's gone.
Now, when it comes to the future, Francis appointed nearly 80% of the cardinals who will elect the next pope. How much do you think his appointments will influence the kind of pope we see next? And is it likely that his successor will continue his progressive vision, or could the church swing to a different direction? And how pivotal could this next papal election be for the future of Catholicism?
So when you look at cardinals appointed by Pope Francis, yes, there are a number of cardinals who share similar concerns and style from Pope Francis. But you have other cardinals who are also very different. The Catholic Church is not doing some cloning, multiplying the same profile over and over among cardinals. You have a huge diversity among them. And so today, and for the upcoming 2 weeks, they have to debate and assess the internal and external situation of the Church and of global affairs. And this assessment will define the kind of profile they are going for. But if they cannot find the right profile for whatever they decide, they may then go for a man of transition that is just going to keep things together, maybe focus 1 or 2 core priorities until we have a new strong leadership.
All right, Dr. Chambon, before we let you go, what is one of the most memorable moments or aspects of Pope Francis' leadership that you hope the Church and its followers will carry forward?
There are so many beautiful things. The recent one was to a small town in North Papua New Guinea, where he really showed his capacity as an 88-year-old man to visit a very remote place. He was wearing a beautiful feather crown, showing his universal sovereignty and his capacity to show proximity and pastoral care for people in a corner of the world that is often forgotten. So that's just a very recent example last September here in Asia. But there are so many beautiful gestures. It is over and over to address conflict in Palestine, in Central Africa, and so on. He wrote beautiful texts. He's been reaching out to all kinds of people all the time. So I think it has been a true symbol of hope and leadership.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Chambon.
Thanks to you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. That was Dr. Michel Chambon, Research Fellow at NUS. This has been The Big Story with me, Nadiah Koh.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.